A whale dies, but the story doesn't end there. When the body is carried by the current off to some shore, people have to take it back out to the open ocean to sink it. Then, through a series of stages at the ocean floor, its tissues and bones can sustain an entire ecosystem. The death of a whale is not always the end of its life. And if you perceived every change throughout your life as a whale fall, you'll realize how the good things that emerge are not entirely separate. Rather, they grow from the loss itself. Our lives are in constant evolution. Though it's not a new idea that change is inevitable or that good comes from hard times. Take a look at some of these quotes and hopefully recognize a few faces. With these, there's two general kinds of changes that we can identify. The first is ones that we create, such as movements for the sake of justice or awareness, and I'll speak to these later on. The other is life events that happen to us, ones we fall victim to, and how we can respond to that. They're very different, but our interpretations of these quotes may shift with that in mind. Maya Angelou says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Humans are built with the extraordinary ability to reminisce, but when we focus on what we wish was still ours, we miss out on the phenomenon in front of us. In a whale fall, it takes some time for the body to sink. That step is necessary to allow deep-sea organisms to reach it. And with change comes a kind of grief that is absent from many of these quotes. Whether it's losing a valued relationship or moving to a new neighborhood, you may feel as if a part of you is gone. Maybe it was just the environment you were exposed to, but you also miss being that person you were when you didn't have to worry as much or you didn't care about how other people thought of you. Everyone experiences this, and we all wrestle with it differently. This image depicts the idea that our grief doesn't shrink, rather we grow around it and open ourselves to receive more. In order to adapt, we should accept our realities with patience and care, allowing the grief to sink in. There is a danger in rushing on to the next thing without understanding our anguish, our frustration, and beginning to navigate where we are, which is here. The body has reached the abyssal zone, and there are 4 stages that ensue. Each of these can help us to understand some kinds of changes that we may encounter. The first is the mobile scavenger stage. Octopi, hagfish, rat tails, and sharks come from across long distances to rapidly remove the whale's soft tissue. Their eagerness relates to changes that are exciting or that we wait in great anticipation for. They had found a rare opportunity and put in the work to get there. Coming to OSHA as, if you can believe it or not, an even tinier 7th grader was a similar process for me. Yet in leaving the place I'd known since kindergarten, there was a kind of grief that I had to endure. This is me with our principal, Mr. Chesick, at the beginning of the year scavenger hunt. I knew that OSHA was a special opportunity, but it was still difficult to step into an unfamiliar space. And for those first few months, I really wanted to go back to my old school. After taking some time, I knew that this was the decision that I actively wanted to make. And so changes at this stage are completely new. They can often take the form of a dream, a goal, or something that we work towards. But committing to an art school also meant not coming home until 5:30 every day and not finishing homework until 2 a.m. So besides sleep, I also had to sacrifice gymnastics. I had invested my time, energy, and identity in this sport for 6 years. So when I stopped, I fully believed that this was a dead end to a huge area of my life. Instead of something entirely new, changes at the enrichment opportunist stage allow you to transform or build upon previous experiences and skills. Crustaceans, mollusks, and worms consume the surrounding sediment, coming close to reuse the energy and nutrients for themselves. They may also feed on the leftover blubber, the stuff that the scavengers hadn't made use of. With no intention of getting involved in another sport, I somehow fell in love with dance. There was a lot of retraining, but this stage is all about reshaping the foundation that is already there, allowing us to appreciate the hard work we thought had come to nothing. There are days where I miss being on the 4-inch beam, but there are others where I wish I had started dancing earlier. I have to get out of both of those headspaces in order to appreciate how so much of my art is impacted by the years I did gymnastics. And maybe I wouldn't value it in the way I do now had the path been any different. Consider how the experiences you once disregarded are informing the areas you are pursuing at the present. Still, I know there are prevalent aspects of our lives that came about unexpectedly. I don't know why I started reading Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson all those years ago, but poetry has since allowed me to process and express my thoughts, as well as address relevant issues that I want to share. And now I couldn't imagine surviving high school without it. By sophomore year, I finally felt somewhat ready and confident enough to share my voice in public spaces. With events, slams, and performances, my relationship with my writing inevitably shifted. I struggled with whether my words were as honest and true when I wrote them for a crowd as when I wrote them for myself. I have to maintain a balance. I'll always love any opportunity to speak, but I have to also remind myself the reason why I write, why I have the urge and why I come to it nearly every night. Changes at the soulfulfillic stage allow you to use your gifts or aptitudes, whether that's in the arts, academics, or leadership, to offer what you can for others, for what community looks like to you. And what's happening here is that bacteria, clams, and worms are emitting sulfide by breaking down the lipids in the bones for other organisms to consume. We tend to view life through the lens of make or break situations, but whether changes come into your path and you choose them, or they completely throw you off track, life is a progression. Just as the decomposers are all varying in size, where it's not as simple as one whale equals 1,000 organisms, we may never truly realize how much a loss impacted our lives. And in coming to OSHA, I got to pursue poetry and dance in ways I probably wouldn't have if I'd gone to a different school. We can only be aware and accepting of our individual timelines, each consisting of stages that cannot be separated or rearranged. This leads us to our fourth and final stage, which requires more faith by sacrificing time and comforts for the sake of future generations. Here, the whale's skeleton is left behind for suspension feeders to reside on the surface of the bones. You may be using your past experiences to inform the impact that you want to make, but it's more about the intention and the scope. So I want to return to one of the quotes on the slide from the beginning. Gandhi says, "Be the change you want to see in the world." I used to be really against this quote because not only is it everywhere, but especially with what we see in the media and the news, there are so many things that I would like to just change. It's frustrating to be helpless to the issues we so desperately want to fix. And our world today is brimming with long-standing, complicated crises. Anyone would tell you that you can't do it all. I'm still figuring this out for myself, and we all will be, nearly every step of the way. I don't know if I want to teach poetry around the world or advocate for environmental justice, and then there's working with refugees or representation in the media. We should be concerned about all of these things. We should care about how they are evolving, but we will not be called to everything. And you don't have to be frantic in gathering yourself from the ground level up. Every loss, change, and decision has led you to where you are right now and can guide you to where you are going. You may find flaws in my analogy, or maybe you found it strange to begin with, but there's something compelling about the way loss makes life possible in the darkness. After all, it is law that energy and matter cannot be created or destroyed. Therefore, sacrifices and adversity can return to you in new shape, be it blessings, opportunities, or treasured moments. With the final thought, I want you to close your eyes and imagine all 100 tons of the whale sinking thousands of feet into the same ocean, but a different world than the one it knew at the surface. There's no way this whale could have known what creatures even existed down here. In the same way, we can be these changes, surrendering the plans we had in mind to embrace the people we are right now. Only then can we begin to create a legacy that will outlive us.